She offered a homeless man a garage for one night. What he revealed will change everything forever. One frigid winter evening, Sarah stood at her kitchen window, staring out into the dark abyss of her suburban neighborhood. The glow from her warm home felt like a stark contrast to the chilling reality just outside. As a dedicated single mother, she put on a brave face every day for her 2 kids, but the weight of loneliness often pressed on her shoulders. Her father always taught her to show kindness, a lesson that had never faded from her heart. Little did she know that this night would test that lesson in ways she couldn't possibly foresee. When she stepped outside to grab the trash, a gust of icy wind swirled around her. When she saw him, a man huddled under the flickering street lamp, his tattered coat barely shielding him from the winter chill. His eyes, haunted yet fierce, met hers. For a moment, time stood still. It was as if her late father's spirit nudged her forward. "Come in," she muttered, heart racing, taking one shaky step toward the stranger. In her garage, they shared a modest meal of leftover chili. As the steam curled from the bowl, Mark's stories spilled out like a river, raw and unfiltered. "I fought for my country, but when I came back, I was a ghost. I just wanted to belong," he said, his voice quaking, tinged with vulnerability. Each word felt like a dagger cutting through Sarah's sheltered life, crashing hard against the comforting barriers she had built around herself. Her eyes were misty as he spoke of the battles he fought, not just overseas but in the streets of a society that often turned its back on him. This was no simple gesture of humanity. In that dim garage filled with old bikes and boxes, Sarah felt the tug of disparity, a twisting reminder that her suburban world was not the only reality. She listened, hungry for understanding, and a part of her began to ignite with compassion. What duty did she owe to someone like Mark, screaming out against the injustices surrounding them? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But then 7 whispers of discontent rippled through their neighborhood like an unwelcome breeze. Blame and fear spread like wildfire, threatening to upend the fragile calm of their idyllic community. Sarah and Mark quickly found themselves standing at the intersection of change, their lives inexplicably entwined. As they confronted a sea of ignorance and prejudice, Sarah's resolve hardened. Could they rally their neighbors to embrace empathy, or would they remain prisoners to outdated beliefs? Her heart raced as she felt the stirring of something bigger than herself, a call for unity, a thirst for change burning bright within her. But navigating this unfamiliar territory was daunting. Sarah clutched Mark's stories as a lifeline, a connection that transformed their shared fears into a powerful anthem for light. And as the frost began to thaw between them, she pondered whether their bond, once a flickering candle, could blaze bright enough to break the chains of disgrace hanging over their head. Would their courage prevail, or would the tides of hostility drown their hope before it could even take flight? The next morning, Sarah woke up to the sound of her kids' laughter echoing through the house. The sun peeked through the curtains, illuminating the kitchen table still scattered with the remnants of last night's meal. But despite the warmth, a chill remained in her heart, a reminder of the man who had shared his pain with her. Mark's stories echoed in her mind, pushing her to confront the murmurings of prejudice swirling in her neighborhood. She made breakfast, but the smell of pancakes and syrup felt muted against a backdrop of dread. What would her neighbors think? Would they understand the urgency of kindness? The worry clenched her stomach as she thought about the upcoming neighborhood association meeting. It was when the chatter would turn serious about their safety, about how she had brought a threat into their midst. As she sat down at the table with her children, she watched them smile, their innocence a comforting balm. They had no idea what lay ahead. "Mom, can we have friends over today?" her youngest, Lily, asked, eyes shining with excitement. "Of course, honey," she replied, forcing a smile, but her thoughts drifted to Mark's empty eyes and the real battles fought unseen. Their carefree laughter felt like a fragile bubble. Sarah needed to take action, to stir her neighbors into awareness. After school, she met Mark outside the garage. "I want to help you," she said, her tone steady. "But I need to speak with the neighborhood association. They need to see you, understand who you really are." Mark's face twisted with uncertainty. "Are you sure? They're not going to welcome me. You fought for this country, Mark. You deserve a voice." She replied, her heart pounding. The drive to make a difference felt electric, coursing through her veins. The tension of that evening meeting filled the air like static. As Sarah walked into the community center, she felt her pulse quicken. She was flanked by familiar faces she'd known for years, but tonight they felt distant. The large room buzzed with chatter, some welcomed her with smiles, while others looked on with cautious eyes. When it was her turn to speak, she took a deep breath, glancing toward the back where Mark stood, appearing slightly lost but courageous nonetheless. "We have to talk about compassion," she began, her voice trembling slightly at the start. "We can't let fear dictate our actions. This is Mark, a living, breathing human being, not just a statistic. His story matters." Hushed whispers floated through the crowd. "Why is she doing this? What about our safety?" Sarah's heart dropped at the harshness that began to take shape. Then, to her surprise, Mark stepped forward. "I fought for my country, yes, but now, I fight every single day to feel human," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm not a criminal. I just want a chance to belong." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension and disbelief. She could see faces start to soften, but she needed more. "Can we not see beyond our walls? Can we not be bigger than our fears?" The response volleyed like a game of tennis. Some voices lifted in agreement, but others expressed anxiety and doubt. It was as if they were caught in a tug-of-war, teetering between empathy and fear. As the meeting progressed, Sarah's hope battled against the billowing winds of resistance. Would this night prove that their humanity could shine through, or would ignorance cast a long shadow over them all? The room teetered on a knife's edge of transformation, and she realized she was not just fighting for Mark, she was fighting for all of them, for the heart of their community. But then a sharp voice cut through the murmurs. "What if he is dangerous? What if he is lying?" Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. The very test she feared had arrived. Would they dive deep enough to discover the truth, or remain afraid of what they didn't understand? As doubt crackled in the air around her, Sarah tightened her grip on hope. "This is not just about you or me, it's about all of us seeing each other as we are flawed but worthy of kindness." Just then, a young boy in the back stood, shaking. "My dad says everyone deserves a second chance." His quiet voice echoed like a beacon of light, and the attention shifted, but would it be enough to shift hearts as well? In that moment, Sarah felt the weight of possibility and the fear of failure, both clashing violently. Would this child's boldness help bridge the gap, or would it all fall apart? Uncertainty whirled in her stomach. The moment hung perilously in the balance. What would happen next? The hall fell quiet, the tension palpable as Sarah watched the boy's courage pierce through the charged atmosphere. Could his innocent words forge an opening in the hardened hearts surrounding them? As the murmurs faded, all eyes pivoted toward her. "You hear that?" Sarah finally broke the silence. "This young boy believes in second chances. Isn't that what our community should stand for? Isn't that the spirit we want to foster?" Her heart hammered in her chest as she stood at the center of a moment that could tilt the scales. She scanned the faces before her. An array of emotions danced across them, fear, skepticism, but also curiosity. Mark shifted uncomfortably, the lines etched on his face telling his own stories of hardship. Sarah turned to him, gratitude flooding her heart. "You're not alone in this, Mark. People can change." Suddenly, an older woman seated towards the front piped up. "It's just common sense, though. You don't just let anyone into your home. What if he hurts someone?" A wave of nods and murmurs swept through the crowd, echoing their sentiments of trepidation. Of course, I understand the need to protect our families. But blindly living in fear can trap us in a cage, Sarah urged, her voice rising above the dissension. Mark deserves more than to be defined by whatever fears we conjure in our minds. A man near the back, arms crossed defiantly, leaned forward. And what if we regret it? What if we let a criminal in? Then we learn from it, Sarah countered. None of us are perfect. We reflect on our choices. We become better. Isn't that what we teach our children? The silence grew thick again, interrupted only by a few hesitant whispers. Mark's eyes held Sarah's, something melting in the guardedness of his expressions. A flicker of hope ignited within her. Let us talk about real stories, she pressed on, feeling the heat of momentum. We all have our struggles. Mark fought a battle you may never understand. I'm not asking you to drop your guard. I'm asking you to open your hearts, even just a little. A woman in the front row wiped a tear from her cheek, her resolve beginning to sway. But how can we trust? How can we be sure there won't be consequences? Trust is earned, Sarah said, her voice gentle yet firm. But we can also create a safety net for each other, one built on compassion. Each small action can ripple out to greater understanding. Just then, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Tom, her neighbor with a reputation for his strict stance against newcomers. He cleared his throat, interrupting the prevailing silence. I've known Mark long enough. He has fought for us, hasn't he? The room buzzed anew, eyes darting from Tom to Mark and back again. I have my own prejudices, Tom admitted slowly. But we're all just people trying to make a life. Maybe we owe it to him to at least listen. A spark ignited in Sarah's heart. Could this shift in perspective be the crack they needed? As the crowd began to murmur with renewed discussions, Sarah felt adrenaline boil inside her. But then another voice surged, a sharp reminder of the boundary they still faced. Listening isn't enough. Actions speak louder. What's next? The moment hung in the air like a fragile dream on the edge of collapse. Would all this become a true turning point, or would it crumble like so many hopes before it? Sarah's breath quickened. We decide what comes next together, she proposed. Let us open our doors, not just our homes, but our hearts. All eyes were fixed on Mark, a fathomless weight of expectation placed in those still moments. The tug-of-war in the community shifted with every heartbeat. Would they rally behind the chance to forge a new beginning, or cling tightly to old fears? The question loomed as the night deepened, opening a chapter none of them expected. But she knew this: every heart has its curve, and hope was a powerful force. With that realization, Sarah took a deep breath, preparing for the next words she would say. What revelations lay ahead in their plan for change? The path stretched out before her, filled with uncertainty, but also with promise. The room buzzed with uncertainty. Conversations darted through the air like fireflies, flickering and fading but never quite lighting up the darkness. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced at Mark, who stood silently, soaking in their tentative support. Let us start with one step, she urged, raising her voice to command attention once more. We have an empty garage just sitting there. It'll keep him safe for a night, and we can see what happens. Right? What if he leaves behind trouble? Someone countered, their voice sharp and echoing fears from earlier. Or what if he brings us all together? Sarah shot back, a note of defiance in her tone. The challenge hung there, inviting them to envision what they could accomplish as a community. Tom stepped forward again, putting his hands up, attempting to calm the swelling tide. It's a risk, yes. But isn't every new beginning? Every act of kindness carries a chance. He looked around the room, searching for agreement. One night could change everything. Sarah felt the momentum shift in this shared vision. Could trust be built even in the smallest actions? She saw flashes of hope begin to spark in people's eyes, tiny glimmers of possible change. A young woman spoke up then, her voice shaking slightly. "I've been homeless myself. I remember the nights filled with fear, not knowing where I'd sleep. If someone had opened their door just a little, who knows what could have changed for me." Her words lingered in the air, raw and poignant. "Maybe it's time we all reflect on the consequences of our decisions," Sarah suggested, yearning for unity. "If we extend our hands instead of closing our doors, we might just find something beautiful." The mood in the room began to shift. Questions turned into contemplations. Hesitation morphed into consideration. A sense of daring hope started to weave its way through the crowd. "Let us do it," a voice called out, strong and certain. It was Mark. "If you'll let me stay for just one night, I'll show you I'm not what you fear." Her heart soared as she noticed small nods of agreement, the collective spirit beginning to weave into a tighter bond. One night. Just one small act could change everything, but just as Sarah felt the swell of optimism reach a peak, a figure stood up abruptly. It was Karen, an older woman known for her strong opinions. "And what if we regret this? What message does this send to our children about safety? We can't be careless." "Trust is about facing that fear," Tom replied firmly, addressing Karen. "To be vulnerable is to be human. We can't give in to what we're afraid of, or we limit ourselves." Sarah felt a surge of admiration for Tom. He was becoming the voice of reason their community needed. She turned to the audience, imploring them with her gaze. "What do we want to teach our kids? That fear wins, or that compassion will always find strength?" The tension crackled like static, a moment suspended in time. Then one voice joined the chorus: "We could give him a chance. One night." Sarah breathed deeply. The force of emotional connection in that room became palpable, wrapping around them like a blanket. One night had turned into maybe something more. As murmurs of agreement grew louder, Sarah felt lighter, her spirit buoyed by shared potential. But in her heart, she knew they were standing on the edge of a cliff, the leap into the unknown looming before them. What might happen when dawn broke? Would they discover the warmth of community, or find themselves grappling with regret? With every waning moment, hope flickered like a candle, fragile yet defiant. Sarah glided into her final appeal: "Let us take this chance. Together." Outside, the stars twinkled like sentinels watching over a moment that could either shatter or inspire. The pivotal decision lay ahead. Was their community ready to embrace the unexpected? As more voices echoed agreement, she felt the tingle of apprehension mingling with excitement. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and revelations, tied to a single courageous act. Sarah held her breath, ready for whatever would come next. Would this truly be the start of something life-changing? The sun broke gently over the horizon, casting a soft glow on the town as if giving everyone a nudge to face the day ahead. The air held a crispness, a blend of new beginnings and lingering doubt. Sarah stirred awake, her mind still swirling with last night's discussions. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment longer, wishing she could shelve her worries alongside the sleepless night. The garage stood empty, waiting. Would it really become a sanctuary for Mark? The thought seemed too monumental yet necessary. She pulled on her clothes, determination stirring within her as she made her way to meet the others. In the community center, a flurry of activity greeted her. People were setting up chairs, organizing snacks, and talking quietly among themselves. However, the air buzzed with an undercurrent of anxiety. Faces were etched with both hope and skepticism. Sarah spotted Tom at the front, speaking with a few neighbors. He caught her eye, a measure of optimism in his smile. "Good morning. Ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice steady but her heart fluttering. They finished preparing, and soon, the clock ticked closer to meeting time. As the community gathered, Sarah noticed a few familiar faces. Karen stood off to the side, arms folded tightly, a scowl juxtaposed against the visible excitement of others. Her posture screamed resistance, as if she were the anchor weighing down a ship brimming with possibility. "Can we really do this?" one older gentleman asked, glancing from Sarah to Tom. This isn't just about one man, it could change everything. Tom stepped closer to the crowd, his voice firm yet inviting. It's true. One act of kindness can ripple through our lives in unexpected ways. Remember, we're all in this together. His words created pockets of quiet understanding among the group. Moments later, Mark arrived, looking tentative but hopeful. The moment he crossed the threshold, silence enveloped the room. Eyes turned to him, some with genuine curiosity and others with veiled distrust. Sarah felt a knot in her stomach but stepped forward. Thank you for being here, Mark. Mark nodded, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. I appreciate it. I know it's a big step for all of you. His voice quivered slightly but held a sincerity that drew a few gasps of empathy from the gathered crowd. What do you want us to know about you? Someone called out from the back that he took a deep breath. I'm just a guy who fell on hard times. I didn't choose this life, but every moment, every experience has shaped who I am. He paused, searching for the right words. I'm here to show you I'm more than a label. Trust works in both directions, right? Sarah felt a warmth spread through the room, the air shifting subtly as the people began to connect with Mark's story. She was thrilled to witness the transformation happening right before her eyes, yet, Karen's voice broke through the moment. And what happens if this ends poorly? What if he doesn't leave? What kind of message does that send? Her tone was sharp, reminiscent of stones thrown into calm waters. Karen, listen, Tom interjected, this is about growth. About breaking the cycle of fear. We have to be brave to make a change. Mark continued, I'm not here to bring trouble. I'm here to show you that we can build something meaningful together. As he spoke, Sarah could see the wavering certainty in Karen's eyes. Something was shifting, she was listening, reevaluating. Could this change the course for everyone involved? Would they abandon their fears and step into compassion? As thoughts shifted within the crowd, Sarah sensed the energy building, igniting with the prospect of change. Just then, a loud crash from outside pulled everyone's attention. Panic spread through the room, vibrating with uncertainty as they turned towards the door. What had happened? What was about to unfold? As the last echoes of the crash faded, silence swallowed the room whole. Everyone turned toward the door, eyes wide and breaths held. Sarah's heart raced as dread began to creep in. Was it an accident? Or something worse? Tom, ever the calm one, stepped towards the entrance. Let us see what's going on, he said, voice steady but urging. He gestured for Sarah and a few others to follow. Together, they moved toward the door, the murmurs of the crowd falling away behind them. Stepping outside, the cool morning air hit Sarah's face, sharp and real. Just outside the entrance, an old, battered truck had overturned. A few community volunteers rushed to help the driver, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair and deep lines of worry etched onto his face. Oh no! Sarah mouthed, glancing back at the crowd who waited anxiously inside. The scene unfolded like a movie, chaos amidst the unexpected. Is everyone okay? Tom called out, eyes darting from the driver to the bystanders. As they approached, Sarah noticed a few people already tending to the injured driver. It appeared he had escaped significant harm but seemed rattled. But still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a simple accident. From the commotion, Mark appeared. He had come out to find out what had happened, concern written across his face. The mix of tension and urgency was palpable, shaking loose any bonds that had briefly started to form moments before. Are you all right? Mark asked the driver, stepping closer, showing kindness even in this moment of chaos. What do you need? The driver looked up, confusion and fear mixing in his gaze. My truck, it's a mess. I don't have the money to fix this. I thought I could make it to work. Sarah felt a tug in her heart. This man's situation mirrored that of Mark's in so many ways, a desperate need for understanding and help. Tom nudged her, pulling her back slightly to the cool shadows of the entrance. Look at this, he whispered. We can't help but see the parallels. Mark nodded, determination swelling in his chest. He glanced from the driver to the truck, then back to the crowd. We can help him. Just like you're helping me. His voice was steady, rallying those around him. The crowd, still cautious, began to step outside. A few began to murmur among themselves, unsure of how to engage. But an old woman stepped forward first, her gentle voice breaking through. We can call for a tow, but also let us see if we can get him something to eat. He looks like he could use a warm meal. A spark ignited in the gathering. Conversations surged, shifting from worry to action. Sarah felt the warmth of hope blossom amidst the chaos. Mark stood tall, his presence lifting the spirit of the group. See? Tom smiled, gesturing to Mark. Change can start in the most unexpected places. But before Sarah could respond, Karen's voice cut through the tentative joy, sharper than before. What's to stop this from happening again? We can't just keep fixing things as they break. The air thickened, the earlier excitement now shadowed by doubt. How could they build trust against a backdrop of uncertainty? With the crowd cautiously watching, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Was this just the beginning of deeper issues to tackle? How could they face these fears together? Mark stepped closer, eyes steady. I believe we can find a way. All of us, he urged, before looking at everyone around. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for. But did they have what it took to step forward, or would they retreat into fear and uncertainty? As the tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, Sarah knew they all stood on the edge of a choice. Would they take a leap into compassion, or would the weight of their reservations pull them back? Suddenly, a shout from the crowd reclaimed her attention. Look! Someone yelled, pointing back into the community center. What now? Sarah thought, her heart pounding with dread. What more could happen today? The crowd surged toward the entrance, curiosity mixing with worry. Sarah felt her heart quicken. Just when they thought they were facing one crisis, another loomed ahead. She barely caught the frantic gesture of a woman waving from the center's doorway, panic etched on her face. Help! Someone collapsed. We need help. The woman's voice rang out, sharp and urgent, slicing through the fragile calm. Mark's determination shifted into a resolute action. Come on. Let us see what we can do. He pushed forward, his footsteps quickening as he dashed back toward the center. Time seemed to stretch, each second filled with the sounds of the crowd muttering uneasily. Sarah exchanged a worried glance with Tom. Do you think they're serious? We won't know until we check, Tom replied, his brow furrowed, but his tone remained steady. They hurried inside, their minds racing with possibilities. Once in the center, they found a small crowd gathered around an older man lying on the floor. His face was pale, and sweat glistened on his brow. The woman who had called for help knelt next to him, desperately checking for signs of life. Is he breathing? Someone asked, the tremor in their voice revealing the anxiety rippling through the group. I don't think so. Another voice cried out. Mark stepped closer and knelt down. He placed 2 fingers on the man's wrist, checking for a pulse. We need to get him help. Call 911. He shouted, his voice cutting through the murmur of the onlookers. Panic mounted, but there was also a burgeoning sense of purpose. People scrambled for their phones, some discussing how they could assist. Sarah felt helpless, her hands shaking as she looked at the man lying on the floor. But then she caught sight of the disheveled truck driver from outside, still shaken but moving toward the commotion. He stepped forward, determination flashing in his eyes. I can help, he said, and before anyone could respond, he knelt beside Mark, his focus steady. I used to be an EMT. Just guide me. The crowd stood in a mixture of awe and relief. In that moment it was as if all their earlier fears faded slightly, leaving something raw and real hope. Okay, Mark said, his confidence bolstered. Let us see what we can do. What do you need? We have to check his airway first. I'll lift his chin and we'll see if he's breathing, the truck driver instructed. With practiced ease, he guided the man's head back, exposing his airway. As a few minutes passed, every breath felt heavy, charged with emotion. Sarah held her breath, eyes glued to the scene. She felt a strange kinship with the driver, both were fighting against life's unforeseen outcomes. Then suddenly, the man gasped, his chest heaving as air filled his lungs. Relief surged through the room, a wave of collective breaths exhaled in unison. They're on their way. A voice shouted, indicating that help was soon to arrive. The once thick anxiety melted away, replaced by a warm buzz of connection and gratitude, but that moment of respite was cut short when Karen stepped forward again, crossing her arms. But what does this mean? Are we just going to stand here waiting for someone else to rescue us? Sarah's heart sank. Doubt surfaced once more like a new storm cloud ready to overshadow the hopeful glimmers. No. Mark stepped up, his voice rising. We have to take responsibility. We can't just rely on the system. We have to be the change in our lives and our community. The man was now stabilizing, more color returning to his cheeks. People in the crowd exchanged looks of determination, some nodding, others still hesitant. It felt like a pivotal moment. Would they choose to embrace this newfound energy or return to their doubts? Just then, another shout echoed from the entrance. Wait! There's someone else outside who needs help. Each head turned toward the doorway again, the atmosphere thickening with anticipation. Who else was out there, and what did it mean for all of them? Would this be yet another call to action or a challenge that would leave them reeling? Sarah felt her heart race. Whatever was coming next, she knew. It would leave its mark. The moment hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they shifted, craning their necks to see the source of the latest commotion. Anxiety deepened, shadows of doubt creeping back in. The hope that had sparked moments before felt fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. Who is it? Someone finally called out. A young man near the entrance gestured urgently. Please, we need to know. A couple of seconds felt like forever as the door swung open wider, revealing another figure. It was a woman, disheveled and trembling. She had deep lines etched into her face, her clothes ragged and weathered. He's hurt bad. She cried, looking desperately into the crowd. He's unconscious under the bridge. Please, someone help him. Tom glanced at Mark, determination flashing in his eyes again. We can't just stand here. Someone needs to go. His voice was laced with urgency. Mark nodded, preparing to take charge once more. Okay. Who can go with me? We need to move, right now. Sarah's heart raced as she felt herself pulled along with the tide of determination. Somehow, she knew she couldn't stay behind this time. The faces around her shone with worry, but there was also a spark of newfound courage that ignited with every second. I'm in, Tom said, stepping forward. I'll help too. The truck driver shouted, setting aside thoughts of his own shock and tapping back into the calm focus of an EMT. Mark counted heads, then looked directly at Sarah. You coming? He asked, his voice steady but strong. Fear squeezed her heart, but she pushed it aside. Yes. She replied, feeling more connection to this group than ever before. Their hearts beat as one in this moment. They were all in, united by a shared purpose. As they moved toward the exit, the woman who had alerted them reached out to Sarah, her eyes wide with gratitude. Thank you. He's always out there, I didn't know what to do. But someone has to help him. Sarah felt a rush of emotions. They were chasing the unknown, venturing into a world beyond their own sheltered lives. But the warmth of community woven between their quickening steps offered a comforting anchor. Outside, the air was cool and brisk, the fading light casting long shadows beneath the bridge. The woman led them, her anxiety palpable. With every step, the weight of urgency impressed upon Sarah a feeling that stretched beyond mere concern. Just ahead, beneath the overpass. The woman called, pointing. The closer they got, the clearer it became just how dire the situation was. A man lay sprawled on the ground, his body motionless. Is he? Tom started, trailing off as fear clawed at his throat. Let's check, Mark commanded, rushing forward. The truck driver dropped to his knees beside the man, concern etched in the lines on his face as he checked for a pulse. Sarah stood back, her heart pounding in her chest. This was real. This wasn't just a practice drill, it was life and death unfolding before her. Please, God, she whispered under her breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on her shoulders. Suddenly, the man stirred, a groan escaping his lips. Relief washed over the group. But it was quickly replaced with a towering question: why had this happened? As they worked to help him, the man's eyes fluttered open. He looked straight at Sarah, holding her gaze with a look that pierced through the chaos surrounding them. Who are you? He rasped, voice barely above a whisper. The question echoed in her mind, stirring something deep within her. She felt the weight of his pain, the stories untold, the hard truths buried beneath years of struggle. And then, almost instinctively, she replied, "We're here to help you." But she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. What else would this encounter reveal? And how would it change the course of their lives? As the sirens wailed in the distance, drawing ever closer, Sarah realized they were on the brink of discovering much more than they had anticipated. The sirens grew louder, echoing off the concrete as time stretched out before them, thick and heavy. Sarah could see the man's chest rise and fall, shaky yet alive. His eyes, a deep hazel, flickered with both confusion and fear. Around him, the group began to assess the situation, a flurry of whispered instructions and measured breaths. She could hear Mark instructing the truck driver to keep pressure on a wound that had begun to bleed, his hands steady despite the chaos. "Don't worry, we're going to take care of you," Tom assured him, kneeling beside the man. "What's your name?" "Jason," the man replied, his voice strained. He coughed lightly, and Sarah instinctively stepped closer, wanting to lend whatever strength she could. "What happened?" "You were hurt," Mark began, but the question hung heavy in the air, unasked yet palpable. Why had he been there? What had led him to this moment? A pit formed in Sarah's stomach. Jason's eyes met hers again, searching. "Who are you all?" He managed, as if he needed to understand their presence amidst his pain. "We're just here to help," she said, stepping forward, her heart racing. The weight of his gaze felt like a bond forming between them, an unspoken connection in a world that often ignored people like him. "Why?" he asked, bewildered. That question pierced her, a simple word, yet so loaded. Why, indeed? Why had they chosen to come here, risking everything? She glanced at the others, their faces revealed the same mix of determination and vulnerability. "Because we can't just leave someone like you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You deserve help." Jason blinked, taken aback. His expression shifted from confusion to something deeper, a flicker of hope mixed with doubt. "Do you know what it's like out here? Do you know what it's like to just be invisible?" Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had read articles, seen documentaries, but she'd never experienced this reality. "No," she admitted softly, "I don't. But I want to understand. I want to help." The sound of sirens grew deafening, and soon the flashing lights spilled across the scene, illuminating the faces of onlookers who had gathered, watching, waiting. Paramedics rushed in, swiftly taking charge, their movements precise and practiced. As they crowded around Jason, Sarah felt a pang of loss. He was no longer just hers to help, they were being taken away from each other, all while she stood there, unsure of what to say or do. "Will you be okay?" she called out, desperate for a connection that felt like it was slipping away. That he nodded slightly, but the doubt in his eyes lingered. "Just make sure they see me, I'm not just some statistic." The word struck Sarah hard, she could feel tears gathering. This man was more than just a number. He was a person with a name, a story, a life full of experiences she would probably never comprehend fully. "I will," she promised, the conviction in her voice surprising even herself. "I'll make sure they see you." The paramedics began lifting him onto a stretcher, Jason's expression fading as he closed his eyes. The moment felt suspended, as if time was waiting to see what would happen next. As they wheeled Jason away, a fresh wave of urgency engulfed her. What happens next? She wondered aloud, feeling the question pulse in her veins. Can we really make a difference? Tom mused, eyes wide as if coming to terms with their actions. Mark placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder, sharing a solemn understanding of the road ahead. "We can try." As the group began to disperse, adrenaline still coursing through their veins, Sarah realized they weren't just leaving with a man's story, they were carrying his struggle, his pain, and his half-formed hopes, and somehow, she knew, whatever they did next would shape more than just their night, it was the beginning of something much bigger. The siren's wails faded into the distance, leaving behind a heavy silence. Sarah's heart thudded in her ears, and one thought festered there: what if helping Jason became more than just a choice? What if it turned into a journey that changed all their lives forever? Bracing herself, she voiced the thought creeping into her mind. We need to find him again and hear his story. But as the shadows deepened around them, she couldn't help but wonder, was she ready for everything that could unfold from this decision? The days passed with a heaviness in the air. Sarah's heart felt swollen with determination, yet the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed her down. After promising Jason she'd help make sure he wasn't invisible, she was determined to follow through. It was no longer just about Mark or the community, it was a call to action that reached deep into her own core. At the next neighborhood meeting, Sarah's voice carried strength like never before. "We have an opportunity, folks. Jason doesn't just represent his situation, he represents us. It's our responsibility to show compassion, to be part of a solution." The atmosphere was electric, charged with an awakening that rippled through the room. But Karen still stood firm, arms crossed. "And what if we get hurt? What if our families, our children?" She fired back, her voice laced with fear. "Karen, I get it. But look around. We're all flawed. We've all messed up in life," Tom chimed in, his voice filled with grit. "What if our community puts forth an effort to actually help someone instead of shut them out? Isn't that the legacy we want for our kids? Would that really resonate?" A murmur of consideration ricocheted off the walls. Change was brewing, and Sarah felt its warmth spread, hope smoldering into a flame. "Let us not wait for someone else to provide answers," she said. "Let us go find Jason and make a plan. We can start a fundraiser, partner with shelters, and be part of the community that lifts people up instead of casting them away." On the following Saturday, Sarah, Mark, and a small group of neighbors, fueled by unwavering enthusiasm, hit the streets. They searched, listened, and knocked on doors. At last, they found him beneath the bridge, a little worse for wear but alive with a fire flickering in his eyes that had dimmed just days before. He looked different, yet familiar, grasping at crumbles of hope, still asking to be seen. "Thank you for coming," Jason said softly, a hint of disbelief dancing behind his gaze. "Do you mean it? You really want to help?" "More than anything," Sarah replied, stepping closer. "We're starting a community initiative to not only help you but others like you. You will not be invisible. Not anymore." Mark, standing beside her, added, "Tell us what you need. How can we make this better?" And just like that, the floodgates opened. Jason spoke of a need for a warm meal, a soapbox to share his story, and most importantly, a mentorship program connecting veterans to resources. Each word felt like a stepping stone, allowing everyone present to grasp the complexity of his situation. Their discussion blossomed into plans that sprang from raw vulnerability. The group began to organize fundraisers, setting locations and dates, each idea building on the last until a community event took shape filled with games, food, and speakers sharing personal triumphs over adversity. Weeks turned into months, their efforts snowballing into a movement. They became a beacon in the community, promoting kindness, awareness, and courage. Mark found purpose, sharing his own story and igniting empathy in hearts that once remained closed. Sarah felt weight lift with every act of compassion and unexpected transformation weaving its way through their lives, binding their hearts in the process. One evening, standing under a star-splattered sky at the launch of their first community event, Sarah felt the full measure of her journey. Laughter echoed around her. Children ran, free of fear. Adults mingled, talking about dreams of hope that far outweighed the darkness of insecurity and isolation, and as she spotted Jason surrounded by folks who recognized him not just as a man with a story, but as a part of their community, an overwhelming wave of joy washed over her. Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, her heart swelling with gratitude that it wasn't just about one night in a garage anymore, it had become so much more. With laughter on the wind and warmth in her heart, Sarah realized she hadn't just offered kindness, she had ignited change. Their broken pieces had become a mosaic, each fragment glinting with meaning and purpose in the new light. In that moment, she heard the echoes of her father's lesson resonate deeply within her: kindness has an undeniable power to heal. As she stood among her neighbors, Sarah knew their journey was just beginning. They would face storms ahead, this was life after all, but they were ready to rise together, linked by newfound resolve and absolute love, and just like that, Sarah whispered to the universe, "This is just the start." Now, the call to action echoes to you. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive stories that inspire change. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the goodness flowing. And comment your feelings about this ending. Let us celebrate transformation together. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful journey unfold. Together, we can build a community that cares.